Deep beneath the sands of ancient Mesopotamia lies a mystery that could fundamentally alter our understanding of human history. Hidden within the cuneiform script of a small clay tablet rests a claim so extraordinary that mainstream archaeology has struggled to accept it for over a century. This isn't just another ancient myth or religious text. This is a meticulously recorded list of rulers whose reigns span periods of time that dwarf the entirety of recorded civilization. The artifact in question sits quietly in a museum, unremarkable in appearance yet revolutionary in its implications. Known as the Weld-Blundell Prism, this four-sided clay document contains what scholars call the Sumerian king list. Written with the precision of a government ledger, it chronicles the reigns of 8 mysterious rulers who governed the ancient world before a catastrophic flood swept across the earth. These weren't ordinary kings ruling for decades or even centuries. According to this ancient record, some of these enigmatic figures held power for over 40,000 years. Modern historians have long dismissed these astronomical reign lengths as pure mythology, convenient fiction designed to legitimize later dynasties. Yet the document itself presents these rulers with the same matter-of-fact tone it uses to describe historically verified kings like Gilgamesh. The scribes who carved these wedge-shaped symbols into clay made no distinction between myth and reality. To them, this was simply history. The discovery of this remarkable tablet began in 1922 when British archaeologist Herbert Weld-Blundell was excavating the ruins of Larsa in southern Iraq. Among the countless fragments of pottery and broken tablets, his team uncovered something unprecedented. The four-sided prism, no larger than a modern paperback book, was covered from top to bottom in carefully arranged cuneiform text. When scholars finally translated the ancient script, they found themselves staring at a document that challenged everything they thought they knew about the dawn of civilization. The list opens with a declaration that would echo through millennia of human thought about divine authority and earthly power. It states simply that kingship descended from heaven to the first city, Eridu. This wasn't presented as metaphor or religious poetry. The ancient scribes recorded this as historical fact, the foundational moment when organized government was established on Earth by forces beyond the mortal realm. The first king named in this extraordinary document was Alulim of Eridu, whose reign allegedly lasted 28,800 years. Following him came Alulgar, who ruled for 36,000 years. The list continues through 8 rulers across 5 different cities, each reigning for periods measured not in human lifespans, but in geological ages. The total duration of their combined rule reaches 241,000 years, a span of time that encompasses the entire development of human agriculture, writing, and urban civilization multiple times over. What makes this document particularly perplexing is its mathematical precision. These aren't random, inflated numbers chosen for dramatic effect. Each reign length corresponds exactly to multiples of the Sumerian unit called a sar, representing 3,600 years. This systematic approach suggests the scribes were recording something they believed to be ordered and measurable, not mythological symbolism. The mystery deepens when we examine what happens after the flood narrative. The document doesn't end with the deluge. Instead, it seamlessly transitions to listing new rulers with dramatically shorter reigns. Suddenly, the impossible spans of millennia give way to more believable periods of centuries, then decades, then the familiar lifespans we recognize from verified historical records. Most remarkably, this post-flood section includes kings who archaeology has confirmed as real historical figures. This creates an unavoidable paradox that has haunted scholars for generations. If the later portions of the king list accurately record genuine history, how can we categorically dismiss the earlier sections as pure fantasy? The same scribes, using identical methodology and tone, recorded both the mythical 28,000-year reign of Alulim and the historically documented rule of later kings. The document presents no internal evidence that it distinguishes between myth and reality. The implications become even more intriguing when we consider the global context. Stories of impossibly long-lived rulers governing before a world-destroying flood aren't unique to Mesopotamia. Similar narratives appear in the Hebrew Bible, where patriarchs like Methuselah lived for nearly a millennium before the flood of Noah. Egyptian records speak of divine dynasties ruling for thousands of years before mortal pharaohs took the throne. Hindu traditions describe golden ages where humans lived for hundreds of centuries. Chinese legends tell of sage emperors whose reigns lasted for hundreds of years in the dawn times of civilization. Could these parallel traditions represent fragments of a shared historical memory, distorted by time and cultural interpretation but rooted in actual events? Or are we witnessing a universal human tendency to mythologize the past, creating golden ages of godlike rulers to explain the origins of civilization? The first city mentioned in the king list, Eridu, adds another layer of fascination to this ancient puzzle. Archaeological excavations have confirmed that Eridu was indeed one of the earliest settlements in Mesopotamia, with foundations dating back over 7,000 years. Yet what archaeologists found there defies easy explanation. The city appears to have emerged with a surprising level of sophistication, featuring complex religious architecture that was rebuilt and expanded repeatedly over centuries. Deep beneath the ancient ruins, excavators discovered evidence of elaborate fish offerings in the oldest layers of the city's central temple. This aligns perfectly with Sumerian mythology, which describes Eridu as the sacred city of Enki, the god of wisdom and water, whose symbol was the fish. According to these myths, mysterious beings emerged from the sea to teach humanity the fundamental arts of civilization, including writing, mathematics, law, and government. The second antediluvian capital mentioned in the king list was Bad Tibera, whose name translates as Fortress of the Metalworkers. This shift from the watery realm of Eridu to an industrial centre suggests a major change in focus for these ancient rulers. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of sophisticated metallurgy in early Mesopotamian civilization, with techniques for working copper, bronze, and precious metals appearing with remarkable suddenness in the historical record. The systematic precision of the king list, combined with its seamless integration of mythical and historical figures, forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about our assumptions regarding ancient capabilities and knowledge. The document suggests that our neat timeline of human development, progressing gradually from primitive hunter-gatherers to complex urban civilizations, may be incomplete or fundamentally flawed. Whether we interpret these antediluvian kings as symbolic representations of cosmic ages, garbled memories of actual long-lived rulers, or something else entirely, their story continues to challenge our understanding of humanity's earliest chapters. The clay tablet that preserves their names has survived wars, empires, and millennia of human history to pose a question that remains as provocative today as it was when first carved into wet clay over 4,000 years ago. In our next exploration of this ancient mystery, we'll delve deeper into the individual rulers listed in this remarkable document, examining what their impossibly long reigns might represent and investigating the theories that attempt to explain how such detailed records of prehistory could have survived into the historical period. The individual rulers recorded in the Sumerian king list present us with a gallery of enigmatic figures whose very names seem to echo from a time when the boundaries between the mortal and divine were far more permeable. Each king represents not just a reign, but an entire epoch of human experience that stretches beyond our capacity to fully comprehend. Alulim, the first of these mysterious sovereigns, stands as perhaps the most significant figure in the entire document. His 28,800-year reign from the sacred city of Eridu represents something unprecedented in human records. To put this time span in perspective, his rule allegedly encompassed a period longer than all of recorded human civilization. During his reign, according to the ancient scribes, hundreds of generations of ordinary humans would have been born, lived their entire lives and passed into memory while he remained an unchanging presence on the throne. The scribes offer no details about Alulim's deeds or character, no epic tales of his conquests or wisdom. He exists in the record as a name, a city, and a number that defies human experience. This absence of narrative detail is itself telling. Unlike the heroic kings of later periods whose exploits filled countless tablets with their adventures and achievements, Alulim is presented as something more fundamental than a mere ruler. He was an institution, a constant in a world where everything else was temporary. Following Alulim came Alalgar, whose reign of 36,000 years continued the pattern of impossible longevity. Again, we find no stories of his rule, no descriptions of wars fought or monuments built. The mathematical precision of his reign length, exactly 10 sars in the Sumerian system, suggests this wasn't arbitrary storytelling but part of a deliberate numerical framework that governed how these ancient chroniclers understood time itself. The transition of power from Eridu to Bad Tabira marked more than a change of capital. It represented a fundamental shift in the nature of civilization itself. The first king to rule from this new centre was Enmenluana, whose reign of 43,200 years coincided with what appears to have been humanity's introduction to advanced metallurgy and industrial processes. The very name of his capital city speaks to this transformation, identifying it as a place where metalworkers plied their trade on a scale that would influence the entire known world. Enmenluana's reign length of exactly 12 sars carries deep symbolic significance in ancient Near Eastern thought. The number 12 represented completeness and cosmic order in numerous ancient traditions, appearing in everything from calendar systems to religious hierarchies. His rule seems to have encompassed a complete cycle of technological and social development, transforming humanity from a simple agricultural society into one capable of sophisticated craftsmanship and industry. The mathematical relationships between these reign lengths become even more intriguing when we examine them as part of a larger pattern. The Sumerian sar, representing 3,600 years, appears to have been more than just a unit of measurement. It may have represented a fundamental cycle of cosmic time, a period during which major transformations in human civilization were expected to occur. The fact that each antediluvian reign corresponds to exact multiples of this unit suggests we're dealing with a sophisticated chronological system rather than random mythological invention. After Enmenluana came Enmenana, whose 28,800-year reign returned to the same length as the very first king, Alulim. This repetition appears deliberate, marking perhaps a return to foundational principles after a period of intense technological development. While his predecessor had focused on mastering the physical world through metallurgy and industry, Enmenana's role may have centered on consolidating and systematizing the social structures needed to manage an increasingly complex civilization. The third king to rule from Bad Tabira presents us with the most fascinating figure in the entire Antediluvian period. Dumuzid, known also as the Shepherd, ruled for 36,000 years, but unlike his silent predecessors, he would become the subject of some of humanity's most enduring mythological narratives. The story of Dumuzid and his tragic fate would echo through millennia of human culture, becoming the archetypal tale of death and resurrection that would influence religious thought across the ancient world. The myth of Dumuzid tells of a divine king who was beloved by the goddess Inanna, but was ultimately sacrificed to the underworld when she needed a substitute to secure her own release from the realm of the dead. His death brought barrenness to the land, while his periodic return marked the renewal of fertility and life. This cycle of death and rebirth became central to agricultural societies throughout the ancient Near East, providing a mythological framework for understanding the seasonal cycles that govern their survival. What makes Dumuzid particularly intriguing is how his story bridges the gap between the administrative precision of the king list and the rich mythological traditions that surrounded these ancient figures. He appears simultaneously as a historical ruler with a precisely calculated reign length and as a divine figure whose passion played out in cosmic terms. This duality suggests that for the ancient Mesopotamians, there was no clear distinction between historical and mythological reality. The reign of Dumuzid marked the end of the Bad Tabira period and the beginning of another transition in the Antediluvian narrative. Kingship moved next to Larak, a mysterious city that has never been conclusively identified by archaeologists. This ghost capital exists only in the ancient records, leaving us to wonder whether it was destroyed so completely by the flood that no trace remains, or whether its name concealed the true nature of what may have been a specialized facility rather than a conventional city. The sole ruler of Larak was Ensi-Padsidana, whose 28,800-year reign once again returned to the foundational length established by the first king. This pattern of returning to specific numerical values suggests a cyclical understanding of time and governance that may have been central to how these ancient chroniclers conceptualized historical development. Each return to the original reign length may have represented a renewal or reset in the cosmic order. The penultimate antediluvian capital was Sippar, a city that would become famous throughout the ancient world as a center of sun worship and astronomical knowledge. The king who ruled from Sippar, Enmeduranki, reigned for 21,000 years and became the subject of one of the most remarkable stories in all of ancient Near Eastern literature. According to later traditions, Enmeduranki was taken up to heaven by the gods, where he was taught the secrets of divination and cosmic knowledge before being returned to Earth to establish the priestly traditions that would preserve this wisdom for future generations. This story of heavenly ascension and divine instruction provides us with perhaps the clearest glimpse into how the ancient Mesopotamians understood the relationship between their antediluvian rulers and the divine realm. Enmeduranki wasn't simply a king who ruled for an impossibly long time. He was a bridge between worlds, a figure who could access divine knowledge and transmit it to humanity in forms they could understand and preserve. The final antediluvian ruler brings us to the very threshold of the catastrophe that would end this extraordinary age. Ubaratutu ruled from the city of Shuruppak for 18,600 years, the shortest reign of all the pre-flood kings. This gradual shortening of reign lengths as we approach the flood may represent an acceleration of time itself, as if the cosmic order that had sustained these impossibly long rules was beginning to break down in anticipation of the coming cataclysm. Ubaratutu stands as perhaps the most poignant figure in this entire chronicle. Not for what he accomplished, but for what his reign represented. His 18,600 years of rule marked the twilight of an age that had endured for nearly 250,000 years. The gradual reduction in his reign length compared to his predecessors hints at forces already in motion that would soon bring this entire epoch to its catastrophic conclusion. What makes Ubaratutu particularly significant is his connection to the flood narrative that follows. Later Mesopotamian texts identify him as the father of Utnapishtim, the flood hero who would become the Sumerian equivalent of the biblical Noah. This familial link creates a direct bridge between the antediluvian world and the survivors who would carry its memory into the post-flood era. Through his son, the knowledge and traditions of these impossibly long-lived kings would be preserved, though in fragmentary and increasingly mythologized forms. The city of Shuruppak, from which Ubaratutu ruled, holds special significance in archaeological terms. Excavations at this site have revealed evidence of a massive flood layer dating to approximately 2,900 BCE, providing physical confirmation that the region experienced devastating inundation during the historical period. While this particular flood was likely regional rather than global, its memory may have merged with older traditions about worldwide catastrophe to create the epic narrative we find in later literature. The mathematical precision underlying these reign lengths becomes even more apparent when we examine them as a complete system. The 8 antediluvian kings ruled for a total of 241,200 years, a number that represents exactly 67 Sars in the Sumerian system. This isn't coincidental, but reflects a sophisticated understanding of cyclical time that governed how these ancient chroniclers organized their historical narratives. Each individual reign length, when expressed in Sars, reveals elegant mathematical relationships that suggest deliberate design rather than mythological invention. The transition between capitals throughout the antediluvian period follows its own internal logic that speaks to changing priorities and evolving human capabilities. From the sacred waters of Eridu to the industrial forges of Bad Tibira, from the mysterious administration of Larak to the astronomical observations of Sippar, and finally to the flood-doomed Shuruppak, we see a progression that mirrors humanity's own development, from spiritual awakening through technological mastery to cosmic understanding and ultimate vulnerability. This geographical progression also reflects deeper themes about the relationship between divine knowledge and human application. Each capital seems to represent a different aspect of civilization that was being developed and perfected under the guidance of these extraordinary rulers. The systematic nature of this development suggests a planned progression rather than random historical accident. The flood that ultimately terminated this antediluvian age represents far more than a natural disaster in the context of the king list. It serves as the great dividing line between two fundamentally different modes of existence. Before the flood, rulers possessed lifespans that transcended normal human experience, suggesting either biological differences, technological advantages, or divine nature that set them apart from ordinary mortals. After the flood, kingship became recognizably human in its limitations and mortality. This transformation wasn't gradual, but immediate and absolute. The first post-flood rulers, while still possessing impressively long reigns by modern standards, were operating within the bounds of extended human possibility rather than the cosmic timescales of their predecessors. The flood didn't just wash away cities and populations, it fundamentally altered the nature of rulership itself. The king list presents this transition with characteristic understatement, using just 4 words to describe the event that ended an entire epoch of human experience. Then, the flood swept over carries more weight than volumes of descriptive text could convey. In this simple statement, we find acknowledgement of a catastrophe so complete that it required no elaboration for ancient readers who understood its significance. What survived the flood, according to this ancient document, was not just a remnant population, but the institution of kingship itself. The text explicitly states that after the deluge, kingship once again descended from heaven, this time to the city of Kish. This suggests that while the antediluvian rulers were gone, the divine authorization for earthly government remained intact, ready to be bestowed upon new recipients in the transformed world. The continuity between pre-flood and post-flood rulership creates one of the most intriguing aspects of the entire document. The same divine authority that legitimized the impossibly long reigns of Alulim and his successors now validated the more modest but still impressive reigns of the New Age. This continuity suggests that the flood, while catastrophic, didn't represent a complete break with the past, but rather a transformation of existing institutions. The psychological impact of preserving these antediluvian memories cannot be overstated. For the people of ancient Mesopotamia, the knowledge that their civilization had once been governed by beings who ruled for tens of thousands of years provided a sense of profound historical depth and cosmic significance. Their relatively brief human lifespans were connected to an epic narrative that stretched back through unimaginable ages to the very foundation of organized society. This historical consciousness may help explain the remarkable achievements of early Mesopotamian civilization. The sudden appearance of complex writing systems, sophisticated mathematics, advanced astronomy, and monumental architecture becomes more understandable when viewed as the restoration of knowledge and capabilities that had existed in some form during the antediluvian period. Rather than inventing civilization from scratch, the post-flood peoples may have been reconstructing and adapting traditions that stretch back to the age of the immortal kings. The global parallels to this narrative structure suggest that the Sumerian king list may preserve the most detailed version of a much more widespread historical tradition. The Hebrew patriarchs, the Egyptian divine dynasties, the Hindu yugas, and the Chinese sage emperors all reflect similar concepts of an ancient golden age characterized by extraordinary longevity and divine guidance. These traditions may represent fragments of a shared human memory about the true nature of our earliest organized societies. The preservation of such detailed numerical information about the antediluvian period raises fascinating questions about the methods and motivations of ancient record-keeping. The scribes who compiled the king list weren't working from contemporary documentation, but from traditions that had been transmitted across the Great Divide of the Flood. How such precise information survived this catastrophic interruption remains one of the document's greatest mysteries. The answer may lie in the nature of the flood narrative itself. If we accept that some form of catastrophic event did disrupt early civilization, then the survivors who preserved these memories would have had powerful motivation to maintain their accuracy. The antediluvian kings represented not just historical figures, but the foundational legitimacy of all subsequent rulership. Any ruler claiming divine authorization would need to demonstrate continuity with this ancient tradition. The meticulous preservation of reign lengths measured in the sophisticated SAR system suggests that numerical precision was considered essential to the document's authority. These weren't approximate figures or symbolic representations, but exact measurements that connected post-flood civilization to the cosmic order that had governed the antediluvian world. The mathematical relationships between different reigns may have served as a form of authentication, proving that the traditions had been transmitted accurately across the generations. The preservation of these extraordinary records across such vast periods raises profound questions about the nature of knowledge transmission in the ancient world. How did numerical data of such precision survive not only the physical destruction of the flood, but also the inevitable corruption that affects all oral traditions over time? The answer may lie in the sacred nature of these records and the institutional structures that were established specifically to preserve them. Ancient Mesopotamian society placed tremendous emphasis on the accuracy of royal genealogies and chronological records. The legitimacy of any ruler depended heavily on their ability to demonstrate proper succession from divinely authorized predecessors. In this context, the antediluvian king list wasn't simply a historical curiosity, but the foundation document that validated all subsequent claims to power. Any corruption or inaccuracy in these records would undermine the entire system of royal authority. The scribal schools that emerged in early Mesopotamian cities were far more than educational institutions. They served as repositories of essential knowledge that connected the post-flood world to its cosmic origins. These schools developed sophisticated methods for preserving numerical data, using mathematical relationships and mnemonic devices that could detect and correct errors in transmission. The SAR-based chronology of the antediluvian kings provided an ideal framework for such preservation, since any mistaken calculation would be immediately apparent when the numbers failed to align with their expected mathematical patterns. The transition from the antediluvian period to the post-flood era reveals fascinating insights into how ancient peoples understood the relationship between cosmic time and human experience. The dramatic reduction in reign lengths wasn't gradual but immediate, suggesting that something fundamental had changed in the nature of rulership itself. The first post-flood dynasties still featured impressively long reigns by modern standards, but they operated within recognizably human parameters rather than the geological timescales of their predecessors. This transformation appears to have been understood as more than mere historical accident. The ancient chroniclers present it as a deliberate divine decision to limit human authority and lifespan. The flood wasn't simply a natural disaster, but a cosmic reset that redefined the boundaries of mortal existence. This interpretation aligns with similar traditions found throughout the ancient world, from the biblical account of God limiting human lifespan after the flood to Hindu descriptions of declining ages, where human capabilities gradually diminish over time. The city of Kish, where kingship was re-established after the flood, represents a fascinating bridge between the antediluvian and historical periods. Archaeological evidence confirms that Kish was indeed one of the most important early Mesopotamian centers, with impressive architectural remains that demonstrate sophisticated urban planning and monumental construction. The rulers listed as governing from Kish show a gradual but steady decrease in reign lengths, creating a smooth transition from the cosmic timescales of the antediluvian period to the more familiar chronology of verifiable history. Among these transitional figures stands Gilgamesh, perhaps the most famous ruler mentioned in the entire king list. His reign of 126 years places him firmly within the realm of extended but plausible human longevity. Yet Gilgamesh represents far more than just another post-flood king. His epic adventures, preserved in what may be humanity's oldest surviving work of literature, explicitly connect him to the antediluvian world through his encounter with Utnapishtim, the flood survivor. The Epic of Gilgamesh provides crucial context for understanding how the ancient Mesopotamians viewed the relationship between their historical period and the lost antediluvian age. Gilgamesh's desperate quest for immortality reflects a broader cultural memory of a time when such longevity was the norm rather than the exception. His ultimate failure to achieve eternal life symbolizes humanity's acceptance of its post-flood limitations, while maintaining connection to its extraordinary past. The inclusion of Gilgamesh in the king list alongside historically verified rulers demonstrates the document's sophisticated approach to chronology. The scribes who compiled this record weren't creating pure mythology, but preserving what they understood to be genuine historical information, even when that information stretched the boundaries of normal human experience. This methodology suggests a level of historical consciousness that modern scholarship has often underestimated. The mathematical precision underlying the king list extends beyond individual reign lengths to encompass the overall structure of antediluvian chronology. The total of 241,000 years represents exactly 67 sars, a number that carries deep significance in Mesopotamian numerical symbolism. This isn't coincidental, but reflects a systematic approach to historical organization that treated time itself as a measurable cosmic phenomenon, governed by divine mathematics. The base 60 numerical system employed by the Sumerians reveals sophisticated understanding of cyclical time that influenced everything from their calendar calculations to their astronomical observations. The fact that antediluvian chronology fits perfectly within this system suggests that these records were preserved and transmitted by individuals who possessed advanced mathematical knowledge. The precision required to maintain such complex numerical relationships across multiple generations of oral transmission would have demanded institutional structures specifically designed for this purpose. The Sumerian king list stands as one of history's most enigmatic documents, challenging our fundamental assumptions about human civilization and the nature of historical knowledge itself. Whether we interpret these antediluvian rulers as mythological symbols, distorted memories of actual long-lived leaders, or something far more extraordinary, their legacy continues to provoke questions that reach to the very heart of who we are as a species. This ancient clay tablet, no larger than a paperback book, has preserved a narrative that spans nearly 250,000 years, connecting our modern world to an age when the boundaries between the divine and mortal were far more fluid. The mathematical precision of its chronology, the global parallels in flood mythology, and the seamless transition from impossible reign lengths to verified historical records suggest that we may have only begun to understand the true complexity of our past. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't whether these kings actually ruled for tens of thousands of years, but how their memories survived the catastrophic flood that allegedly ended their age, carrying forward the knowledge and traditions that would become the foundation of all subsequent civilization.